I can't have this conversation without mentioning Lillie's Determination. This card, since release, is in a lot of decks. I would dare to say above 90% of decks run at least a copy of the Lillie's Determination because it's so good not to run as your first supporter. Just to get the right setup, use 4 or 5 cards from your opening hand and then get a fresh grip of 8 on March or even in your turn 2.
Let's go.
Alright, so it's been a while since I did another Beyond the Meta. So, this one will be on how niche cards shape the meta. So I have a lot of cards here picked out that are irreplaceable in the format. So there are none like these, and a lot of them will lose and going into rotation. So we'll just get right into that. So what I'd like to start with is cards like Penny, which not only remove damage, but also completely return the Pokemon to your hand. There are only 3 cards in the current format that do it, one being an Ace Spec, then there's Penny and Turo, and each one of them is unique. Turo because it can return evolution Pokemon but you lose energy. Penny because it returns any basic Pokemon, you retain the energy and everything attached. And of course the Ace Spec, which does the same as Penny but it's an Ace Spec, so you can only have one copy and it's an item. So all the damage reset strategies will have to adapt because we do have Wally, but that only works for Megas. And again, how these unique cards shape the meta is the point of this video. Because of these, we had some very good stall and reset strategies with bigger Pokemon, and that may go away without a replacement. So hopefully we can get one of these coming in the upcoming sets. But we'll see. The second one I want to highlight would be Grand Tree. Again, a spec 1 copy deck, but this was wholly unique as in allowing you to go all the way up just with a stadium. But we recently had the printing of Vitality, which does this even though it's only for grass types. And even stronger, I would argue, than our Grand Tree, because Grand Tree can't evolve them any turn they are played, while Verdant Forest can actually evolve the grass Pokemon any turn they are played. Meaning that for grass Pokemon, infinitely stronger, but doesn't do anything for any other typing, while this works for every typing, but it still has restrictions that apply. So that's another example. And because you have access to these have opened the way for a lot of decks to actually be played where they have previously been too slow or a bit too clunky to actually see play in the format. Because again, we have that Teal Mask Venusaur build with Bayleaf that you would see once in a while. That's pretty decent. And again, very unique cards. We don't have anything else like them. So if you don't have them, there's nothing that can really replace them. Because even comparing them to Rare Candy, still not the same. Because this one actually gets them out your deck. And Verdant, as long as you have them in your hand, you're able to do that and evolve them. Another such example is the stadiums that allow you to search for a Pokemon. Of course, we had Mesagoza first, which was a coin flip to get any Pokemon, which early in the format, a lot of people were using, because getting any Pokemon at least half the time was very, very useful. But then we got Artazon, and with Artazon, you surely get a basic Pokemon that's non-EX, or non-Robux, I should say, and that was game breaking. And this continues to be a card that you see very, very commonly, especially because a lot of the support Pokemon don't have rule boxes, so it allows people to just find things without having to rely on Nest Ball at least once a turn to reliably find some Pokemon so it could evolve, utility, or even counterplay. And again, this also shaped the meta because this allowed things like Gardevoir and Dragapult and all those things to consistently find their basic Pokemon so you can get to their stage 2. So even if it is you can find your body puffin, your stadium, and this remains so you can constantly use it until it's destroyed. And up until recently, we didn't have much stadium defense, except in the form of playing another stadium. And again, most decks were running this, so you can destroy Artazon with another Artazon. It would help your opponent, but it would still be very strong. It still is very strong, and I believe right down until rotation, there's another one that's going to see a lot of play. And again, we have no replacement for this. Pretty unique effect. So some that not rotating, but again are still shaping the meta, are 3 more stadiums. One being Gravity Mountain, because this allows the stage 2s to get within kill range, because a lot of damage caps fall within just under that 300 range, if not 300. And this bringing them down means that they're much easier to get rid of. For example of this would be in the Ethan deck, with Ethan's Typhlosion, where it was unable to one-shot Dragapult, but the inclusion of these actually made that possible. And even the same for Charizard. And that's really good. And they also placed in a couple other decks as counterplay for Charizard and all those big stage 2s to just bring down the cap a bit. There's also a deck that specifically used this with the Terra Serena, because the interaction with Terra Serena was when you have this on the board and you put one of the Pokemon on 38 points, they would die to state-based action and you would just kill them outright. So that was pretty interesting as well. So this one card actually made a deck very broken in a particular matchup. And next, of course, by now we're all familiar with Team Rocket's Watchtower, which stops all the normal Pokemon from using abilities. So that's our Ursalunas, or Dunsparces, or Dudunsparces, all of those good stuff. And there were a lot of normal Pokemon that people were using for support. And again, the partial path to the peak was very much warranted and needed, even though it's just being normal typing, with the relevance of Hoot Hoot and Noctowl and those kind of things was very good. As well as going to be more relevant going into the next format, as we are getting that new Meowth that's going to allow you to search for supporters like Luminion before. So, lots of stuff to note there. And again, very good counterplay. It's stadium defense when you want to get rid of other things. Pretty good. We of course have Jamming Tower as well. And again, pretty unique. It stops the tools. And in this format where there's item lock, tools will way out. This also stops that. This also helps with those air balloons and stuff for retreat options. Really, really good card. The alternative to this is an item that will destroy 2 tools, but again, this actually stops them outright, because the item, that the tool scrapper that stops the 2 tools, will not be able to stop the TMs, because TMs only activate in your turn and then they get discarded. So, I still find this a very pro card to run. But again, even this warped the format a bit, because where people are running a lot of tools to counterplay and to make up strengthened decks, when this came out, you had to cut down the amount of tools or run more counterplay, because you couldn't rely heavily on the tool strategies anymore, because even in Dragapult, they'd have 1 or 2 copies of this, just to get around those Heroes Cape, Big Charm against, what's it called again? Gardevoir and that kind of thing. Because remember, Gardevoir originally was using the charm to increase their Pokemon power by 50, so they could put more damage on it, so it could output more damage with the Drifloon and the Screamtail. So this card actually shattered that strategy and forced the Gardevoir deck from the first to change, because a singular card could have gotten you 2 prizes by bossing and forcing them to put the damage on them, and then playing this, knock out their 2 attackers. That's 2 prizes, and then possibly winning the game off that. So another example of a card that warped the format and was game changing. Another Pokemon in this video. So we're just doing the supporters here. So let's get into the actual supporter trainers now. So of course we have Carmine, which we are going to keep. And again, super nice as one of the supporters that go back to the old rules where you can use it on your first turn. Yes, you get only 5 cards, but if you use out all the cards, 5 new cards or a new group of 5 is excellent. And again, even in decks such as the Cerulege, key piece for those who actually run it, because on turn 1 you could Squawk and Carmine and possibly get around like 8 to 10 energy in your grave if you search properly. Unmatched, underrated card, not seen in many decks, but again, it does shape a lot of decks because they can only exist because these cards are here. We can move on. Okay, again, Colress Tenacity. This allows you to search for any energy, and there's nothing else in the format that does that, as well as a stadium. So it's a 2 for 1, and it doesn't search for basic energy, as most cards do. So again, in this format where you have so many stadiums and so many stadiums that are useful, this allows you to bring both energy and stadium in a format with Neo Upper, Luminous, and Prism, and even the energy that allows you to draw the 4 cards that they run in the Alakazam deck. Again, unmatched and stands by itself, given decks' ability to function, because without them, many decks would be much slower. Of course, we have Crispin with the energy acceleration, because again, most decks didn't have access to this, because it was only in water we had Baxcalibur. In fire we now have the Ember, but before that, everybody, not every single typing had access to energy acceleration. Because I was using dark before recently, where we now have the thing that the toxic thing is a dark type that accelerates dark energy, but for 2 damage on your bench. We didn't have that before, and this is just evergreen. 2 basic energies of different types and accelerates 1. Because most of those things just do 1. Because again, we still have Guardy in the format. We're losing Guardy, but we keep in Crispin. Pretty good. Always see these, especially in those decks that require more than one type of energy, and allowed for the hybridization of many decks. Because whereas you want to try to keep to one type for the acceleration, with the addition of Crispin, you can now use different types and not worry about how you get any energy there, or if you have to split them, like you could Crispin, the Darkness on Monkey Dory, so you could also move damage, while also placing an energy where needed for an attack. And again, Monkey Dory was another Pokemon that was a hero during this past year. But again, we have other acceleration in this list that you may not have seen, but doesn't mean that it wasn't as good, in the form of Giovanni's Charisma. So let me bring up that for you here, because I mentioned some cards, but I'm not showing them to you right away. So let's get into Giovanni's Charisma. G-I-O, and here we go, Giovanni's Charisma. So this card bounced an energy from my opponent's active. If they didn't have one on the active, you couldn't use it, but it accelerated 1 energy to your active. Again, underrated, but it was the best we had until Crispin came out. And still, running both would have been very, very influential, because I did in my Okidoki deck, and that allowed me to actually get off that mixed energy for the Oki attack with Luminous or Prism and a Rock energy. And that's what kept me relevant and powerful. Then of course, we're getting into things like Professor Sada'Vitality, of course, which was one of the strongest supporters since the beginning of the Scarlet and Violet block, because it allowed us to actually get energy onto these energy heavy decks, and is a backbone of Raging Bolt. Because again, this will be, I believe, rotating, but Raging Bolt will still be here. And how Raging Bolt will function without it is a question. And the question is if it will also function. It should be able to, because we still have energy transfers and there's a lot of other options. But it will take a significant hit without this card. And we're going down to some oldies but goldies. Of course we have Judge, format crossing, amazing equalizer, but it was improved with Iono. Because again, if you're behind, this will be very good, as you can help you get back some cards, and make sure you don't draw the cards that you put back. But again, if your opponents is further ahead they are, the more cards they lose. Which is amazing, because a late game Iono, when they're on one prize, feels so good, because if they don't have the win on the board, shatter many dreams. Many dreams were shattered by Iono. Sorry about that. And of course, like I said, we have more recent ones here, like Tulip, which is rotating, but just found its place as it allows the Alakazam deck to recycle Alakazams and the Psychic Energy. So, like I said, every card has its day, and sometimes it's just before for rotation. But again, supremely powerful in that Alakazam deck, because you can bring back the whole line and the energy for it to attack. So, very strong. And now some honorable mentions for just future going forward and what's upcoming. So one, we have Janine's Secret Art. Just like before with some mentioned energy acceleration, we are losing the Seda, but with Janine's Secret Art and the and Absol getting so much more play and being one of the top decks, Janine is going to be format defining going forward, as it brings 2 darkness energy and puts one on 2 different Pokemon. Very strong, and Dark has a lot of energy acceleration in this format, so that's something to look out for. Another example of something to look out for would be, of course, again in the Dark typing, Grimsley's move, which can bring any Dark Pokemon to your bench. That's in your top 7, of course, but only for Dark Pokemon, and you have to guarantee you're not sure if it'll always be done unless you set it up. But with something like Mega Gengar, amazing. I have a deck that follows it. And again, people won't sleep on this card, but it's going to do really well. I already spoke about Drayton, so I'm going to include Drayton in this video. We also have Hilda, which already is a card that defines the format, bringing those evolution Pokemon, the mechas that have to evolve, as well as the energy. Because in a format where, again, there are only 2 cards that can search any energy, being Hilda and the Professor Colress, Tenacity. Very good. And again, this sees play in most of the evolution decks, especially the Dragapult, Charizard, the Alakazams, even some of the previously in the grass decks, but they were replaced by Dawn. Again, Dawn's fairly recent, so I'm not leaving it on the list just yet. We'll have a talk about it a little later. But of course, I can't have this conversation without mentioning Lillie's Determination. This card, since release, is in a lot of decks. I would dare to say above 90% of decks run at least a copy of the Lillie Determination, because it's so good not to run as your first supporter. Just to get the right setup, use 4 or 5 cards from your opening hand, and then get a fresh grip of 8 on March or even in your turn 2 before you attack, to refill your hand before you take that first prize, and even after, to just get 6 cards new. It's an amazingly strong card, and this card will be going get even better as we go along when it continue being included in decks. And now, when people are afraid of like drawing and all of that, some people have actually ditched their Ionos for Lillie Determination in lieu of their card draw over hand disruption. So that's a debate on its own. So we have a video on debating some philosophy on card selection versus card draw, and just outright card draw versus disruption, that kind of thing. Because again, there's opposing factors. You can run no disruption and just focus on your synergy and strategy, but sometimes you have decks where you need to disrupt them or you auto lose. And again, last card on this list, one of my favorite cards and king of disruption, Xerosic Machinations. Yes, they get to pick the top 3 cards, so the 3 best cards in their hand, but in a format where everybody has access to so many cards in their hand, when you get 12 to 20 cards in your hand and you make them discard down to 3, yes, they keep their 3 best cards, but you get rid of so many pieces, it will hurt them. And even in Recent decks, this is the way around deck, like hand destruction, deck destruction. You learn to draw a bunch of cards, and then you get them to the grave because you can't recover all of the pieces. We don't have that much recovery in the format. And if you could get them to ditch the actual good pieces, and you're unable to get them back, that's it. Because even if you want Iono to send back cards so you don't deck out, you get rid of a whole 100 Xerosic. But yeah, these are all the cards that, like I say, shaping the format. And to keep an eye on, there's some rotating. I need to look out for cards that are similar or have the same effect. We'll have more videos upcoming. This one kind of long, but I hope you found it informative. And I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
And thanks for tuning in. Fuck me, fuck this game. Bye.